Welcome back to Cards and Comics. Today I have my 2023 hobby predictions and collecting goals video, and to start off I'm going to go through my 2022 hobby predictions and goals kind of one by one as I go through both my predictions for 22 and 23 kind of together and see how I did and see if I made some of my collecting goals or if I missed the mark, and we'll go right into it. Now, 2022 prediction number one was the price corrections will continue to go down. I think that was a softball, easy one to predict. However, what I was really focused on was the reasons, and one of the things I talked about was overproduction of cards. I think that is a problem. I think design and just desirability of some cards is a problem. And the other thing I talked about or thought about was, how the card market worked in 2018. Was there's a few factors you had to look at for a card to be worth money and to be sustainable in its growth, and that was how desirable the player was, how desirable the card was, the rarity of the card, the condition of the card. Things like that were very important. The performance on the field, those things were always important. And in 2022, from 2020 to 2022, it didn't seem like that mattered as much, and now those things are becoming huge factors again. This leads me into my first prediction for 23, and that it's going to be that wax price is correct. And there's a lot of reasons for this, and I think this is going to be one of those really big, interesting time periods for the hobby, because we're sort of at a crossroads in a lot of ways. One thing is that people are demanding more for the money. I think that is always a good thing. But, retail is printed to the moon. And so it's not rare. It's not, hard to find. And I think in some cases that's good. But with the pricing of it, when you've got mega boxes priced at $60 to $80 and you're getting maybe $5 to $10 of card value out of those boxes, the market's not going to sustain that for very long. You're not going to have a ton of people really interested in buying those cards at those prices and continuing to eat all that loss, especially if it's around the idea of flipping the cards. Now, for people who are collectors, maybe they'll do some of that, but even collectors will figure out pretty quickly you can just buy the cards on the secondary market and not have to go through this retail pricing. And the print runs are going to take a long time to go down, because it's like turning the Titanic. Once you get this machinery going on supply chain where you've got print presses and raw materials to buy and purchase to get all this stuff, in the pipeline, that takes 18 months to 2 years sometimes to even get back under control. And I think you're going to see a lot of overprinting and sets coming up pretty soon. And you're going to see a lot of discounted and product sitting on shelves. I think Upper Deck Hockey is a good example of that. I think you'll see that in some Topps base sets as well coming up. Breakers won't be able to move poorly designed low value products. Now, I have two products shown here out of the three, and one of them is not like the other two, right? So poorly designed products like Skybox Metal Universe Champions, Stadium Club Baseball are going to probably sit at breakers, because people will realize really quickly that the inserts, the cards themselves, either are not worth enough, to collect. Their design is so terrible that no one even wants the cards, or that the hits themselves are so rare to get to be worth anything that they're not worth opening or even taking a chance on. Now, you got a product like Cosmic Chrome, where even the base cards are worth something because the design is cool and unique. If you do hit the 1 in, I think, 3 box auto, the auto checklist is so strong, your chance of hitting somebody worth something is pretty high. So people are much more willing to pay for that product. And you can see how those boxes did on the secondary market. The price of Stadium Club and Metal Universe Champions tanked, whereas the price of Chrome Cosmic went up. So that's going to be the model you'll see in the future. You'll see good products go up in value, bad products tank, just like it has in the past. You're not going to be able to see breakers sell bad products at inflated prices like you did during the pandemic. And again, we're seeing this in the CCG movement, that bad products are just going to sit and never be sold, and something's going to have to be done, either blowouts, discounts, Black Friday sales to move that product. So it's going to be a very interesting time frame. And card values, again, I talked about before, but there's going to have to be something legitimate factors to make people want to buy these products. There's not going to be this built-in need for these products just because they exist. There's going to have to be something collectible, something fun, something of value in the products to make people really want to seek them out. Now, in 2022, my second prediction was that there was going to be consolidation in the industry. And we did see the Topps Fanatics deal, but we haven't seen a ton of just consolidation. You know, Panini Upper Deck are still out there. No grading companies have really folded into each other. Don't even have Tag up here. You know, a new one even started. So again, on this one, I give myself kind of like a meh. You know, you had one major deal, but I will say this, that I did talk about internalization and distribution. You know, I talked about drops versus mass, which means like small distribution model versus, you know, these big, massive nationwide, you know, distribution. I think did happen a little bit. But the big thing we saw was the consolidation or the reduction of distribution companies from the Fanatics network, which is something that's kind of a big shakeup in how cards are being distributed. So that's a foretelling of something in the future. So we'll see, and we'll pay attention to what's going to happen this year and next, because I do feel like more of this is going to happen, but it didn't happen very much in 2022. Now, in 23, my prediction number 2 is going to be that grading companies will become desperate for your business. It's already started to happen a little bit. PSA's already done multiple price changes and tier switching on their pricing. I think Beckett and SGC will follow with similar movement. CSG just did some big splashes with their flip changes and how they're looking at grading sports cards, non-sports cards. So there's a lot of things happening, right? And you know, right now we know there's too much capacity. And I think this is going to see that without a cheap grading option, and there's still not a cheap grading option on the PSA side, even on the SGC side, there's no $10 bulk grading. There's nothing to get commons sent in anymore. And so with that grading part of the hobby dead, there's too much capacity for what cards remain, because PSA's got weird tiering. You know, after $4.99, I think the next price point is like $75. Which is just ridiculous for a PSA. So PSA's really priced themselves very oddly. SGC is, I think, a little more expensive for, you know, the cheaper card, so it's not as viable as it could be. And again, CSG and Becca have to do something probably in pricing pretty soon to kind of keep up with the Joneses. So we'll see. But right now, there's just too much capacity. We know these companies have built up the supply chain networks. We know PSA's opening multiple offices. The New Jersey office, I believe, is open. So things are moving. But, you know, it's definitely going to, they're definitely going to run into a capacity issue if they don't drum up more sales and more need to grade. And again, the pecking order has been solidified. There's no real way that a CSG or SGC or Beckett's going to overtake PSA unless a major scandal, unless something really happens with PSA that they implode pretty dramatically that will allow these other companies to overtake them. Really, the only competition right now is number 2. And you can make a case for CSG, Beckett, and SGC all being number 2. I think we're all very comfortable with SGC being number 2 and Beckett being number 3 and CSG being number 4. However, that could all change by, collaborations, by purchasing each other, consolidation like I just mentioned. So again, there has to be something dramatic happening, I think, for a big shakeup in the pecking order right now. Again, PSA is going to have to talk about registry, because really registry is where they make a lot of their money in the past and where they're going to have to really rely in the future, because again, they have all this capacity. And if everyone's sitting at home holding all their vintage base cards, all their cheapy player cards because they're just not valuable enough to send in, they're going to have an issue with capacity. And so they're going to have to do something on the registry to make these guys want to compete again and get through those, player sets, those 53, someone building like a 91 top set. Who's going to want to grade a 91 tops common if it's going to cost, $30 a card or $18 a card or whatever it is now? That's just unrealistic for anyone to do that. So they're going to have to do something there to make grading commons make sense. And again, if pricing becomes the biggest reason for people to grade with someone, that's going to drive people out of business, right? That's just the end result of a price war is going to be either consolidation or people just leaving the market because they can't compete. They can't find enough, qualified people to do the job, and then they'll make more mistakes, and they'll have to either eat more of, let's say grading mistakes, or people will just lose confidence. HGA is a good example of that. They made a couple big mistakes, and now they're not even considered to be, one of the big 4 graders. They're on the outside looking in. TAG still has to prove themselves. So again, there's going to be a lot of ways for these companies to get driven out of business from a pricing and a competition perspective and a volume perspective. Now, 2022 prediction number 3, I talked about collaborations with, creators like Stevie Aoki, and athletes will create their own card brands. And there's going to be a lot of, let's say unique things happening because of how Fanatics has structured its deal. But for the most part, that did not happen. We saw, Stevie Aoki and that awful hobby movie. But other than that, there was a few things out there from some collaborations, but it was kind of a quiet year in terms of just, these artists and influencers, working with card companies to create something unique. Now, do I think something's coming down the pike? I think 100%. We know that the sneakerhead model is, Fanatics' original blueprint. Is it going to change? It could. Different leadership there now, so maybe that changes a little bit. But we know that they like the idea of doing these small limited runs, teaming up with artists and influencers to drive home the collectability of that product. I think it's still going to happen, but we didn't see it in 22. It may happen in 23, but I give myself sort of a negative on this one. And we didn't see breaking with celebrities become a thing either. So I think there is opportunity there for the hobby to do that, but we didn't see that in 22. Now in 23, I want to really just flip it and talk about, what companies need to do from a design perspective. And I have some definitely cards up here for a reason. I'll talk about them in a second, but the first thing I'm going to say is, if you're a company using retro designs, you've got to be accurate. You cannot do those cards and do them in a cheaply stupid way compared to the original and get people to really be excited or want to buy the product. You have to keep also the rarity level similar. And so I'll talk about this card up here, this upper left card, this cut above Trevor Lawrence. And on the right of that card is the Barry Sanders card that it's supposed to be designed after. The reason why this is so egregious is that, with the PMG revival, you saw PMGs come back. And for the most part, they looked very similar to the original PMGs. Now, there's in the Marvel universe, there's been some different takes on PMGs. But however, the PMG is pretty much just a foil card that's shiny. So shiny foil, not hard to do, right? But when you take a card like that Barry Sanders, which has the die cuts on the top and bottom, it looks kind of like a saw blade, very easy to damage. Well, that card's hard to make. So they do something stupid like the card on the left, which is just die cut around the number or the letters. Very easy to do from a design perspective. So they did the easy thing to do. And then they inserted the card at a much higher ratio than the card was inserted in the original packs. And so they've taken the name of a product, a card that people desired in the past. They take that card, they do it very poorly, insert it at a much higher ratio to make people feel like they're actually getting some value. And they kind of ruin that card for future collectors, because if you think about it, if a card becomes easy to get and then the luster of that card goes down, no one's really going to want to, be looking for that card in future products. And so you can really harm a card or a brand of a card by doing what they're doing with this card right now, this cut above card, which is basically tarnishing the brand, tarnishing that image, what that insert used to stand for, which was one of the coolest, most innovative looking die cuts and a very hard card to pull, to a card that looks terrible and is very easy to pull. And so to me, this is something that these makers cannot do. This is something that will help ruin their brand, help drive value out of the product, right? And the accuracy is just terrible. And the thing that makes it so lazy is that they have a blueprint. It's not like they have to design something new. They just have to kind of repeat or improve upon the original design, not make it terrible and not make it worse. And if you look at technology today, it's gotten worse. I mentioned this in other videos, but we've lost double-sided refractors. We've lost embossed refractors, museum cards, linchpins. It goes on and on and on. That there are cards out there that were made in the 90s that you can't see again. We very rarely see holograms. We very rarely see things that we saw very often in the 90s. And it just seems sad. And it feels like companies have either decided that that technology is either too expensive or they don't know how to do it anymore because whoever the manufacturer was that did that technology either no longer exists or they don't own the patents or something is missing there to allow them to do those cards again. And the other thing I want to talk about is they need to find ways to excite collectors versus just putting an autograph or numbering the card or changing the color or the materials, right? So this is a good example of this card, this explosive card that just came out in this year's Absolute, which is basically them just doing the kaboom. It's just a very lazy card. They just said, hey, people like kaboom, so we'll just do another version and call it explosive. I mean, it's literally the same card. The card on the right, the Phoenician card from Phoenix, and you can see a card that actually tried to be unique and cool. And I feel like even though that set and that card isn't as popular as I think it should be, because it is very unique looking, it has a cool looking design, definitely more going on in that card than just that foil board explosive card. But people are led down this path to think that these case hits that are basically just foil board cards are something to desire. And I think that is something we have to, as collectors, demand more design, demand more effort pivot into cards, because of course with the explosive card, they just, changed the colors and started, serial number these cards. And the one thing I'd also say is that quit creating multiple versions of the same card. When you're going to make these high-end rare inserts, just do one, because then you make that one card the one to get. You start making 5 versions of it that have, numbers or colors or autographs or whatever it is, then people lose the uniqueness of that one card. The cool thing about the 90s inserts was a lot of them were single cards, like a cut above. There was just one cut above. You got the Barry Sanders and you had it. You didn't have to get 5 colors. You didn't have to get the autograph version. You didn't have to get the one that had the patch on it. You got the one card. You make it rare, make it hard to get, make it cool looking, and people will seek it out. Just like I think the Phoenician card is a beautiful example of how to do a modern insert. They just don't have the will to do it. They want to take the easy way out, which is, create parallels of everything and put, sticker autos and everything. And they think that adds value. And I think we need, as collectors, we have to demand more design, more input from the companies to make cards cooler and more unique. 2022 prediction number 4, eBay will become less relevant to the hobby. And again, I don't think this really panned out. There's some other, Whatnot was a good example of a company coming in with something very unique in how the selling platform works compared to eBay and other platforms. But it's still a meh because eBay is still very important. It's really, they've come out with their own version of vaults, and, it's like everyone's doing the same thing. So I feel like, it's just not there yet for eBay to be taken down. Everyone's tried their own take on it. I think Whatnot's got its most unique take on how to sell cards. Check out my cards, it's still going strong. So there's other marketplaces that are strong, but no one's really tackled the behemoth of eBay head on to the point where I feel like that they feel even threatened at this point. Now in 2023, what I think is going to happen is, again, the platforms are going to really start competing for your money. I think there's going to be this dearth of, with the value of cards going down, especially in the modern side. We're seeing it where the LeBron James rookie card went from like $180,000 in a PSA 10 to like below $30,000. That's a huge amount of fees that companies like eBay and Golden are missing out on. It's not just the cards are going down. It's the fact that the fees they make on selling those cards is way down as well. So when you have these high ticket items that make them money, because again, these companies don't make a lot of money on your $200 cards and down. They make money on these big whale ticket items. And when those whale items go way down, that's where these companies are starting to lose a lot of money in their monthly auctions, right? Now, I start with the fact that vaults everywhere, right? And I don't think vaults will matter in the future. I think it's just like, I view it almost like how we've taken TV and you made everyone has their own streaming service to where you have to log in 40 different places to see whatever you want to see. Do you really want to have vaults in 8 different places for your cards? and you're going to have to transfer vault to vault to vault to try to get a card to someone. I think that just makes it more difficult than easy. Everyone wanted this to be easy. I think this makes it a lot more difficult. I don't want to have to trade with someone. I don't have to create a vault to be able to complete a deal with someone. I think that makes it even harder. That, I have a PWCC vault, but I don't have an eBay vault, so I can't do a trade with you because your good cards are all locked up in the eBay vault. I think that's not easier. I think if everyone has vaults, then maybe it's easier, but I don't feel like it's making this process better. And I think it was designed to be sort of this like e-commerce way of trading, and it's just not there yet. And again, platforms are trying to separate themselves. Whatnot gave a bunch of money to influencers to spend on their platform. You saw some collaborations with SGC and Topps recently, where they're trying to get people to grade through and through them and then sell the cards. PSAs will let you sell directly from them into Golden. So there's a lot of things that they're trying, but I just don't know if any of that's really going to make a huge impact. I don't feel like that there is enough of people who would do that, because people like to control how things are being bought and sold. I don't think that's enough volume for these companies to really make up for the value that they're losing. So they're going to get desperate. And when they get desperate, they're going to start competing on price. And they're going to start reducing fees or no fees for seller. So this works, like if you have a card over $1,000, then you don't pay a fee at all as a seller. The fee comes directly from the buyer. So basically they tack more onto the buyer versus the seller to get people to list more cards. And this is a tactic you've seen a lot in other auction houses. So I could definitely see this becoming more of a thing where if I have a $5,000 card, I'm going to shop it around to whatever auction house will give me the best deal so that I sell it through them and get the best seller fees or no seller fees, so I don't have to pony up any money on my end. And then discounts for purchase over a certain amount. I think on the buyer side, the idea is that if you spend $5,000, $10,000 on cards, you can get those. You can get a discount. You can get an actual discount in your fees. And I think that could happen because, if you think about it, you're trying to encourage buyers to pay more for these cards, to drive up, to make the sellers want to list their cards in your auction. You want the final value to be higher. And so if you take a less percentage and make people bid a little bit more, you might create more volume for your marketplace, right? So I could see that as well. So there's going to be some strategies, I think, out there for these sellers or these platforms to try to generate more cards to sell, especially high end, to get more fees, because that's what they like. They like the high end cards because it generates more fees for the same amount of effort. And then we still don't know what Fanatics is going to do on the selling side. We know they have plans for Dutch auctions on things like an open products, but what are they going to do with cards themselves? Are they going to sell individual singles? Are they going to have an auction house? Are they going to have breakers on their website? We don't really know how they're going to distribute 100%. We don't know how they're going to sell 100%. It's all still a big mystery. So Fanatics is still kind of a black box that hasn't been open yet to determine how everything's going to work. And that is probably going to make some people nervous on a lot of ends. Distributors, card shops, and the marketplaces. 2022 prediction number 5, my last prediction was that some things that might become things in 2022. And I talked about, other forms of media turned into cards. I think they're trying this. We saw, Stranger Things cards come out pretty successfully. I know that there's going to be a CCG from Wizards of the Coast coming out on One Piece, I believe. So there's going to be, that's a huge IP for them. So there's a lot of things they're trying, but how successful they'll be and later on may, is still to be determined. Refractors are becoming high end, but I think there is a high, let's say a pump and dump a little bit on this, where a lot of these went way up and then have come crashing down like everything else. So I don't know how sustainable that was. I still feel like it's a good value play for people who just like having cool cards, to buy these pre-2015 refractors. We talked about iconic inserts. We talked about, retro remakes of them that failed pretty miserably with the Skybox and Metal Championship cards that just look terrible. But they're still pretty valuable. And I think if someone were to actually copy these things properly, put them in the right rarity, it still could be a good thing for the hobby, but they haven't done that yet. Goats like Willie Mays, Hank Aaron have gone up in value, so I still think Jim Brown, these cards are still, Bill Russell are still valuable. I think you're going to see more and more. So I think that was a little bit of a thing. And then I talked about encapsulation of other things, hardcover books and things like that. Still not happening. However, the one thing that I didn't think about was Pops being graded by PSA. Who'd have thunk it, but it did happen. So on that, I was a little bit correct. So I gave myself a big meh. A lot of these things didn't happen, but some things did happen. So it's kind of like, yeah, a few things I predicted did come through. Not 100% like I thought, but some things did happen. Now, for 2023, unfortunately, I think you're going to see companies going out of business. I think card shops could be a big target because the distribution channels from Fanatics is changing. Just recently on The Past is Alive, the YouTube channel, who opened his own store during the pandemic, announced that his shop was closing. And I have seen other announcements from other card stores that they're closing, or they're going to online only, or only staying open for like the weekend. They're changing their business model because they don't have the business like they used to. Because again, there isn't this demand for quick flipping a product and making a lot of money easy in the hobby. And so people have moved on to other things. And so there is less demand. Fanatics' commitment to the card store model is definitely not very reassuring. They're not really committing much at all. That the model that they've put out there to, with Topps, for example, and Panini is going to be sustainable. So they have not committed, much to this model at all. In fact, most people feel like they're going to pick winners, meaning that they're going to support certain stores that they feel better service the customer, and that the stores they feel like don't service customers the way they would like are going to have to scramble for product, meaning that they'll be buying product on the open market just like us. So it's going to make them at a huge price disparity compared to their competitors. So I think this is a way for them to curate the type of marketplace they want, the type of dealers they want, the type of card stores they want. I think they will definitely pick winners and losers. And they're already cutting out distributors. Southern Hobby and GTS were cut out this year. So we heard about that last year in 2022. So we're hearing that, they're starting to take the distribution side under control themselves. We don't know how they're going to do it. We don't know if they're going to open their own distribution company. We don't know if they're going to go direct store to store, or they're going to just sell on their website. Who knows? But this definitely changes how stores can get product. And so that definitely doesn't support the smaller LCS business model. And as a crossover, we're seeing a huge problem with gaming stores. And there's a lot of crossover stores that do both sports cards and gaming cards. And we see the big, huge issue with Magic right now. Pokemon's pretty strong, but Magic definitely is struggling dramatically. And a lot of other CCG games are starting to struggle. And that means that inventory is dead inventory for these stores. That puts a lot of pressure. And if you're a dual store, like a comic book store, card store, sports card, and CCG store, which a lot of stores are, you're seeing a lot of pressure from all sides. And that can make this pain even worse if you're having to pay retail prices for some of your product and can't move it because you're priced higher than your competitor who gets the deal from Fanatics. So it's kind of sad. I feel like, if we see these sports cards going out of business, these stores going out of business, it starts to feel more like the 90s. Again, we talk about, the contraction of the 90s when you saw hundreds of stores closing because there was just no way to be sustainable. And I do feel like we're going to see a little bit of like that. I don't think we're going to see the full on 90s, where every card store pretty much almost went under or almost went under, where only the few stragglers survived. We won't see that level of mass extinction event. However, I do feel like you're going to see the stores that have low margins go under. You're going to have to evolve. So you're going to have a store that the Fanatics folks thinks that maybe is the store of the future. You may have to make some changes, modify yourself, or change what the store is to better bring in some volume and sales, whatever it is. You may have to sell soda pop or something. I don't know. Do something to make collectors want to stay there longer and buy product. But you're going to have to evolve a little bit because just opening packs in the stores and selling singles is probably not enough anymore. All right, so that's the last prediction for this year, and now moving on to my goals. So goal number 1 for 2022 was to collect Maze cards and autos, and On this, I think I did a really pretty good job. I did pick up two 50s Maze cards, a 59 PSA 8 Maze and a 58 Maze 7. So those are two really nice Maze cards. And I did add two on-card Maze autos, a 62 Tops, I believe it was a Heritage or Lineage card. Anyway, it's the Chrome auto, on-card auto, the 62 Tops card, and another on-card auto as well. So I picked up two really nice Maze on-card autos in 2022, and I picked up two 50s PSA graded cards. So from that side of it, I think I did accomplish what I set out to do. Now, the cards on the list that I have pictured here, I got 0 of those cards. Not for lack of trying, it just, pricing is still pretty high on some of these cards, and availability is still pretty low on some of these cards as well. It's not like they come up for sale every month. But I did feel like I did move the needle forward a little bit, and so I gave myself a check mark. For 2023, I'm going to add Hank Aaron into here. And to really say, I want to really focus on Maze and Aaron in 2023. And I want at least two 50s cards per player in 2023, which is going to be very difficult. And so to do that, I'm going to have to think about some lower condition cards. But I definitely want to finish my Aaron run in the 60s, and that definitely means adding the 61. And that's the last Aaron card I need from the 60s to complete my 60s run of Aaron. I have the 70s Aaron run. I just picked up the 75 Aaron PSA 8. I have that in an SGC 8, but I now have it in both a PSA and an SGC 8. So from a PSA set registry perspective, I now have the entire 70s run. Now I need one card for my 60s run. And so I definitely feel like that's doable for 2023. And again, I talked about eye appeal versus overall grade. I will definitely look at cards prior to 55 just for eye appeal and good looking cards. I don't care quite as much about the grade. I'll be definitely looking at condition, eye appeal versus price, because I won't be able to afford a PSA 8 52 Tops Willie Mays, so I'll have to find the best condition, best eye appeal card I can afford. This is a big X, sorry about that. Big X on this one. This one really disappoints me because it's something, as a Spider-Man collector, and I don't talk about it as much as I do. I mean, there's guys out there with Spider-Man in their name that on YouTube that talk about Spider-Man all the time. But I've been collecting Spider-Man. It was the first thing I collected as a kid. It's the only thing I really collected when I came back to comic books back in the early 2000s. And so it's really been this and Alex Schomburg and LB Cole are the only things that have been really standard for me in collecting comics. So for me to not move this ball at all forward, like not get a single issue of these first 10 issues graded at all, or the annual, just shows like I just, the pricing was still too high. Competition is fierce for these books, but I still should have been able to make one or two deals, and I just didn't. And I felt like it was disappointing. So in 2023, I'm going to get serious, but I'm not just going to get serious about these first 10 books. Even though those are the 10 that kind of, to me, have sort of the awe factor. When you get a book in the first 10 of Spider-Man, you kind of just, every one of those books is just cool because of just the rarity, just the specialness of the first 10. But, I still only have one issue, number 4, in the first 10. So I have to, get more, and prices have come down, but I don't even have a checklist. And this is a very common theme that you'll see for me in 2022 and 23 is I don't have updated checklists for a lot of the sets I collect. I don't have a 63 Tops checklist that's up to date for the set I've been collecting. I don't have a Spider-Man checklist. I don't have a checklist for things like my Willie Mays collection or even Hank Aaron collection. I just go from memory. And when you do that, sometimes you buy doubles or you miss out on something you thought you had because maybe you sold something or you traded something away and you forgot about it. That can happen. So I have to create a checklist and really review the condition of the comics I own. I want to have kind of a standard level of condition. And, for going to shows this year, I will only sell doubles for the first 300 issues. If I don't have more than one copy, I will not bring it with me to a show to sell because it definitely creates this, temptation to sell something that you don't really want to because it's part of a collection. Goal number 3 for 2022 was my Refractor and Griffey insert collection. And I feel like this is where I spent a lot of my focus on 22. This was where I feel like I moved the collection and the needle most forward. And this for a lot of reasons. One is it was a lot of fun. So I got kind of caught up in the hype of these cards and really wanting to lock down some of the cool ones. And that really took over my interest. You see at the detriment of things like the SpiderMan collection and other collections, this became a big focus. And you can see, I feel like I really accomplished it. And you see a lot of the cards here. I mean, this is just a small portion of the cards I picked up in 22, but you can see, the 97 refractor, the Allegiance refractor, which is numbered out of 100. I got one of the last cards I needed for my base refractor set. Here's just a really cool artist proof card, things like that, but just a lot of them. I don't even show the autographs and everything I picked up at the National, the Crusade I picked up. So again, I picked up a lot of cool cards of Griffey in 22. So I feel like this was the one collection that really moved the ball forward on. Now for 23, I really want to, go back to that fact that I didn't pick up any of the cards on my list that I showed on the screen. They're all cards I still need, but I took out the 94 Manuel Griffey Auto. I think that card has been so tampered with. I'm just going to focus on the UD Legends and the Onyx Auto. Honestly, those are the two I really want to get in 23. And then finish off my refractor, my base refractor collection, and then really focus on these lower print cards and move off, just refractors into some of these other artist proof prize collections, fractal matrix, mirror cards. I think those are cards that haven't got as much publicity and still maybe a little cheaper. The raves, things like that, still low numbered, still hard to get, still good condition in terms of eye appeal, but not as hyped as some of these other cards. And maybe that'll be some value plays I make in 23. But you can see that just picking up one of these cards will be amazing. Like, even the 94 Finest, if I can get it in a 9 or better, would be an amazing card. So very, very hyped to get one of those cards in 23. 2022 goal number 4 was Alex Schomburg and LP Cole comic books from the Golden Age. I mentioned earlier that SpiderMan and Schomburg and Cole were my only constants I had in comic book collecting since I came back in early 2000s. I gave myself a big X on this one too. I did pick up 3 very nice LB Cole raw comic books in 2022. They are going to be in an upcoming video. They're still on their way. I bought them at the end of 2022. And so they count, but they're not graded, and they fit into that whole category of that 25 to 30 raw books I need to get graded. So even though I've bought some raw books from LB Cole that are very nice, some of his coolest covers, I think, but they're still raw, so they need to be graded. And so it just kind of feels like I didn't move the ball very far. I picked up a few Schomburg books, but again, not any big timely books, anything that I would consider to be a key. Now you could argue that any Schomburg cover is a key. I would just say that the timely books are like 10 steps above anything else he does. So every book I picked up in 2022 that was Schomburg was definitely not a timely book and definitely not what I consider to be one of the key books I wanted to find. So I give myself a big X here, and I feel like it's one of the collections that I actually like the most that I didn't pick up on. Just like with SpiderMan, it's a little disappointing that I didn't move the ball very far on this book, on these comic books. I am excited to show you the Cole books I did pick up in a future mail day, but it didn't, move the needle far enough for me to say that I accomplished anything that I wanted in this goal the way I was looking to do it. Now for 2023, I'm keeping the same goal, but, I definitely am going to be more focused on it. And again, I do have those Cole books coming in that I'm going to get graded. The one thing I need to do is I definitely need to find a press and grader that's more local. The one I was using was back in Indiana, and I don't feel like that's a sustainable way to press and grade comic books, to wait till whenever I travel back and forth, which I do 2 or 3 times a year. That's just not a way to get any volume of books graded. So I got to find a local guy who can do it, someone I trust. So that's something I'm working on. But, I will definitely be looking for quality over quantity here. With comic books, I've been buying a lot of variant covers and a lot of single issues of books to sell at card shows and comic book shows. And maybe for 2023, I do more of trying to focus on the collection a little bit and sell the volume of inventory I already have. instead of adding more. Now, my last goal in 2022 was that I actually worked on, because I'll talk about my last goal for real in a minute. But 2022 goal number 5 was the football refractors. I mentioned, that I felt like these were going to be a big deal. Now, how did I do in this collection? Well, this started out as being just like buying a lot of just cool Hall of Famers, to where I just got focused on, and I gave myself a big check mark because I did pick up a lot of Barry Sanders cards. So this really turned into a Barry Sanders and Peyton Manning collection more than anything, because that's the players I end up focusing on. And you can see, even though they're not refractors, the Crusades are very cool cards. So I picked up both the purple and the green Crusade Sanders. I picked up the gold refractor from 96 Finest, and I just picked up the 97 Finest gold refractor at the end of 2022. It's on its way to me right now. So I've got both gold refractors, 96 and 97, for Barry Sanders, and his 2 Crusades. I only need the red now to have the whole set. And I picked up Peyton Manning's rookie card refractor as well in 2022. So I felt like this was a big check mark, and I'd got some pretty awesome and big cards from the 90s. And I also picked up a few other players besides these guys as well, like Reggie White, Brett Favre, Dan Marino, Troy Aikman. So I definitely feel like this was one collection I definitely moved the needle pretty far on in 2022. Now for 23, I'm just going to focus on Barry Sanders and move away from just the refractors and focus on the rare inserts, and kind of collect like I do Griffey, focus on the number cards, the autograph cards, the 1 per box or less inserts, something, precious metals. I got exclamation points in here, and just the really cool looking inserts, the really awesome cards that everyone loves, and get them in for Sanders and Peyton, because compared to what I'm paying for Griffey Jr. cards or even Michael Jordan cards, as an example, these cards are peanuts. Peyton is a fraction of Sanders. Sanders is a fraction of Griffey. So to me, it's a way of collecting, having value, and not having to spend tons of money. Now, Sanders cards can be very expensive for some cards, so it's not like I'm saying that Barry Sanders has no value, but comparatively to Jordan and Griffey, definitely lower, and Peyton is definitely not as expensive as any of those guys, and he's a lot of fun to collect too. So, and I came from Indianapolis, so he was a guy I watched kind of grow up as I was living there, so it was kind of fun to really be there when he was there. And again, if I see other players of cards I like, I'll continue to buy them if they're at a good value. But I'll be focused more on if they're in a set I want to collect. For example, if I want to collect the precious metal set or the gold refractor set, I might just buy them all and have the full set, and then just be a set collection. But ipso facto, I'll have the Peyton and the Sanders card, hopefully, in that set too. So it's like 2 sets in one, kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But I also have some more diversified cards in my collection. So that's the last collection goal. And I'll talk about the last goal I had in 22, which is not really I call it a thing anymore, because really on this indigenous collection, I have to really decide internally, do I want to continue it in the way I'm doing? Because I sold off some of my Chief Bender cards, and so I've kind of decided on Chief Bender that I'm just not going to, I just don't have the time and effort to really put into it, because I got to a point where to get any new cards for Chief Bender, I was going to have to spend a lot of money, because the cards I needed from him that were still available, or that I still needed, were very expensive, because they were the really rare cards, like this Rochester Bacon card, very expensive. And so did I really want to spend that much money on a Chief Bender card, or did I want to spend on the Griffey cards, or did I want to spend it on comic books or whatever else I was going to have in my budget? And in every case in 2022, the Griffey cards, the other cards won. The Maze cards, the vintage cards, they always would come up first. So I felt like I kind of made that choice already. So that's why I chose to sell some of my Chief Bender cards. However, on the comic book side, I did pick up the 2 comic books that are on the list here. They are in my collection, so I bought both those books. So unlike a lot of stuff on this video, where I didn't hardly get the books or the cards I showed in the slide, I actually did pick up these 2 comic books. So I have moved the comic book collection along a little bit further than I have the card collection. And then I have to also decide, do I want to continue collecting the 33 Gaudi set the 33 Indian gum set because I have about 1/3 of the set completed. So these are things I'm going to have to decide if I want to keep going. So I'll think about it. I haven't decided fully yet because if I make the decision, I'll probably just end up selling what I have. But it's just one of those things where I don't know. So that's more to come on that collection. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comments section of the video. What you think about my goals and predictions. What are yours? How do you want to move your card collection, your comic book collection forward in 23? How'd you do in 22? Did you go over your budgets? Because that's something I want to talk about too. Eventually is budgets for this as well in a future video. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.